Solutions to the Dropout Crisis, addressing the dropout crisis one strategy at a time. Brought to you by the National Dropout Prevention Center Network with support from K-12 and Fuel Education and in partnership with Clemson Broadcast Productions. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome once again to Solutions to the Dropout Crisis. Here we are in December, and I know everybody's scurrying around because the holiday break is coming up, so we appreciate you joining us today. Joining me also is Sandy Addis, the director of the National Dropout Prevention Center and Network. So Sandy, here we are. It's getting cold out there, but it's warm in here because we've got another good show up ahead.
We do, Marty. We're going to a colder place, however. We're going to Alaska. We're very pleased to have our guests with us from Alaska today.
Okay, I'm looking forward to hearing from them. And I know it's pretty cold up there, so we will enjoy our heated studio, as always. There's always things going on with the National Dropout Prevention Center. So could you kind of tell us about something that's coming up in February for, I don't know how many years this has been so, but tell us about
Marty,
it.
I'll be glad to. We are approaching our National At-Risk Youth Forum event in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina in February. It's listed on our website. We have the information there for folks to go online, learn about that conference and register. This year, we're focusing the At-Risk Youth Forum on the important role of athletic coaches and extracurricular sponsors. Those folks, as we all know, play a strong role in keeping kids in school. And so we're focusing on how do they do it and what can we learn from them. So many of our speakers are very successful coaches who have motivated young people to stay in school and be successful.
That's going to be a fun one. And of course, we're very proud of our Clemson football coach. She's going to be making an appearance as well. So it's going to be a really neat event. Plus all the other kinds of workshops that the forum is well known for.
We'll have over 75 breakout sessions for folks to choose from and a number of keynote addresses. We really feel like this is going to be one of our best and biggest forum events.
Yeah, and I know in February people are kind of looking forward to spring, and it's spring in South Carolina then, so
exactly.
Come and join us for that. Well, we want to tell people about the show today, but first I want to point out to everybody that we have a way that you can communicate with the presenters. And because you're on this website for the National Dropout Prevention Center, you'll see there's a discussion board, and that's, of course, www.dropoutprevention.org takes you to the solutions programs and that discussion board. So have comments there. We'd love to see them, and the presenters can share it, and so can folks from the center staff. And Sandy and I are not tweeters, but we will advocate for tweeting on behalf of the viewers who do. And so the center does have a tweet address, and that's the hashtag NDPCN. And I'm not sure whether it's called a tweet or a handle, but that's what is there. So why don't you tell us a little bit about our program today, because we want to get started.
Marty, the National Dropout Prevention Center some years back did a lot of work in Alaska, working with school districts, doing program assessment and reviews, consulting, providing technical assistance to school systems in Alaska. And so we're very fortunate today to have with us Dan Walker, who is the superintendent of the Lower Kuskokwim School District, and Kelly Tonsmeyer, who is with the Alaska Staff Development Network.
Yes, and I think it's time that we maybe brought these two gentlemen in to the studio with us. Ta-da! Magic! Here they are. Here they are. So welcome to Solutions, Dan and Kelly.
Thank you.
And so we know you have a lot to share, and one of the things is I know you are also in a warm setting, because look at them. They look like us. In fact, they look like it's even warmer there. So Kelly, perhaps we can start with you, because you are the director of the network, and you have brought these wonderful programs in rural areas of Alaska to our attention.
Sure, Marty, thank you, and Sandy. The Alaska Staff Development Network has provided training and technical assistance to Lower Kuskokwim School District and Alaska's 52 other school districts for more than 30 years. The work that we're so excited about discussing with you today will talk about the result of an ongoing 5-year capacity building partnership between the Alaska Staff Development Network and Lower Kuskokwim School District that is funded in part by 2 3-year U.S. Education Department Alaska Native Education Program grants, which I co-direct with Carlton Coons, Dan's assistant superintendent. This is a remarkable story of overcoming barriers to change Alaska's largest rural school district composed of 27 schools in 23 villages, and to help them better meet the needs of rural Native students. The work in LKSD, as we call Lower Kuskokwim School District, builds on lessons learned from similar work in Bering Strait School District, also funded through the U.S. Department of Education Alaska Native Education Program. We presented that last month, so perhaps some people saw that, but we build on that work we started 6 years ago in the Bering Strait School District. What I would say to the audience is, if we can do this in 25 high poverty, rural, remote Native schools, you can do it too. The barriers, as you'll see in this program, are quite challenging. It's my pleasure to introduce my colleague Dan Walker, Superintendent of Lower Kuskokwim School District. Dan is a visionary leader with an unwavering commitment to seeing all his students graduate. This is a work in progress. We don't have all the answers, but we're seeing measurable improvement every year. And boy, my hat's off to Dan and his staff. They're doing fabulous work.
Well, thank you, Kelly, for that introduction. And thank you to Marty and Sandy and the National Dropout Prevention Center and the network. The center really has had significant influence on our work. The 15 effective strategies for dropout prevention, as I think you'll see as we go through here, are scattered throughout the work that we've done and are really core to a lot of our mission and beliefs and values and how we work to move the school district forward. I think it's important to kind of lay the context here a little bit of the circumstance of LKSD and where we're located. And Marty and Sandy, if we could cue the little video, I think that would help lay some of the groundwork for us.
I think that would be good. Let's go.
Yuriyama ausaram kaan Yuriyama ausaram kaan Ya eheya 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 Yuriyama ausaram kaan Yuriyama ausaram kaan Yuriyama ausaram kaan Ya eheya 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 Ya eheya 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 Aling afkenak aminares kina Aling afkenak aminares kina Aling afkenak aminares kina Kawangcha amakina eyana eyana eya eyana Aling afkenak aminares kina Aling afkenak aminares kina Aling afkenak aminares kina Kawangcha amakina eyana eyana eya eyana Yuriyama ausaram kaan Yuriyama Ausaram kaan Yuriyama Ausaram kaan Ya ehe ya ehe ya ehe Ya ehe ya ehe ya ehe.
Well, thank you for showing that video. I hope it shares a little bit of where we're at. It's a pretty remote area. You know, I came to LKSD as a first-year teacher 25 years ago with my wife and daughter and landed in the small village of Quinnahock, about 80 miles south of Bethel, not really knowing what I had gotten myself into. I've been here for 25 years. I've been a teacher in Quinnahock for 8 years. I did my administrative internship there. I moved to just north of Quinnahock to the small village of Eek, a little smaller village than Quinnahock, about 300 to 350 people, and was the principal of the K-12 school there, about 80 to 90 kids at the time. Was there for 8 years, was offered to come to Bethel as an assistant superintendent. I thought I would stay in Eek until I ended my career. I just absolutely loved it and loved the people and loved the kids and was really having the time of my life there. And I was one of the people who said I would never move to the district office. And I learned from that, never say never. And I saw the opportunity to take some of the things we had done in Eek with really focusing on the culture and technology and breaking down barriers for kids to help them be more successful. So I took that job in 2008, 2009, and worked as assistant superintendent for about 6.5 years. I'm just about to finish up my second year of the superintendency, and am really enjoying the opportunity to lead such a wonderful group of people and find ways really to break down those barriers and find ways to help kids be successful.
Well, I think that's quite a story, and to have the longevity that you have in the district, Dan, speaks volumes about not only yourself but also the value that provides for the district. Can't you see that, Sandy?
I can. That's consistency is very important, Marty.
And understanding your population and the issues, and learning from the ground level of being right there in the classroom.
Yeah, it's been very important, and it's really hard to lead an organization that is so focused on culture and the native culture and the importance of the language without having been there and been on the front line in the classroom and understand the challenges and the barriers that are faced by our kids just by the very fact of the remoteness is such a huge barrier. And having had a small part in being part of the team that brought the first internet to the school district, that was a first step in breaking down the barriers in the early to mid 90s, and then fast forwarding today to really focus on how we can help kids be successful has been really important. I think it might be appropriate if we could cue the first slide. It kind of gives a little further context of the size of our school district and what we're about. And I think important to that is our mission. And you can see there that our mission really is focused on culture and learning in the context of that culture and helping all of our kids to have a quality education, but valuing the bilingual aspect of of our native culture. As you can see from the map that's overlaid there on the lower 48, we're a pretty large school district. And if you could go to the next slide, gives a little bit of the demographics here. We have, as Kelly mentioned, 27 schools in 22 villages, plus the hub community of Bethel. So 23 communities total. That is very geographically isolated. We're about the size of the state of West Virginia, about 21,000 square miles. Bethel is our regional hub, so we have jet service in and out of Bethel, but there are no roads to drive here. It's all fly in and fly out. And once you get to Bethel, it's also fly in and fly out, typically, depending on the season. Now, the weather we're in right now, as I mentioned to Marty and Sandy earlier, so that, as you can imagine, affects everything we do. And this time of year, we'll have a lot of our residents that will travel by snowmobile as well as airplane. So the rivers will freeze, and those rivers become kind of our thoroughfare, if you will, and allow our community members to travel between the different regions, the different communities in our region.
Now, I really wondered about that, Dan, because I don't think I saw any vehicles. I saw, the sleds and the planes, and it's just extraordinary that there are no roads. And so this is
really
rural.
It's a bit of culture shock when you get here, because you're used to, if you've come from Anchorage or the lower 48, jumping in your car and going to the next village. Well, for us to go out and visit one of our communities, we're either having to, and there are plenty of vehicles here in Bethel, and for example, I can get in my truck, and once the river is frozen, I can drive on the ice road on the river to the neighboring villages to visit the schools. So that gives you a little bit of the context and really the challenges that we face in traveling between our communities.
Yeah. Wow. Well, if anybody's out there wanting an adventure, I think you know who to contact.
Yeah, well, absolutely. And we're always looking for great teachers to come and work with our kids, and we have a great program that certainly I put a plug in for that. If you see us at job fairs and things, we think we have a lot of good things going on, and we have a lot of room to grow. We don't have all of the answers, but I think we've got a lot of longevity here between myself and Carlton Coons, one of the assistant superintendents. He's been in this area since 1979 and is married into the area, and I've been here for 25 years. And not to pat us on the back or anything, but you really understanding the context and understanding the culture and the values that our communities have, you can't buy that experience by bringing someone in from the outside. You really need to have people that you encourage to grow from within in a professional sense, and that's really a core value, I think, of our school board, and I think they've done a great job of helping the administration grow those the teachers and the staff members that want to come here, and local staff members, local community members that want to work for the school district, and a lot of support with helping them get their degrees and come back and teach our kids, because that's one of the most important things. As I mentioned a little bit ago with the slide on the demographics, we have about 4,100 kids all told, and 27 schools. And our schools range from a low of just over 10 students, K-12, in the smallest village of Platinum at the far southern tip of the Lower Kuskokwim region, to our largest village school is about 260 kids, K-12, in the community of Gweethluk, which is about an hour boat ride upriver. So that gives you a little bit of we talk in how long does it take us to get there, not necessarily miles. So that gives a little bit further context. If you could go to the next slide, it further shows a little bit more. You know, our families here really depend on the land for a lot of their resources. The subsistence hunting and fishing, that subsistence lifestyle, the hunting, gathering, is really, really important to our communities. We have one of the highest poverty rates of anywhere in the nation. Many of our communities still don't have running water and flush toilets, and that is a huge has a huge impact on our communities, and has a huge impact really on the schools as well. I remember as a principal in Eek one year when we were headed into state testing, and I had at the time just under 80 kids in the school, K-12, and we were testing 3rd through 10th grade. And of that 3rd through 10th grade cohort, I had 17 kids out that day with strep throat. And so when you think about test scores and things like that, it's really important to put it in the context of the circumstance in which we live, and that has a huge impact on our work.
I would think so.
I would think so.
The other thing, just to kind of reiterate, and we've hit on that a lot, is the transportation piece. You know, for our kids to travel, and we really make a concerted effort in giving kids opportunities outside of their communities to travel to other communities, to travel to Bethel for organized events and things. That's really important, and I think it gives kids a real opportunity to kind of expand their horizons and get outside the small area of their communities. One of the really important things for our school district is the native culture and the language. We live in an area that probably has, in fact, I feel confident saying, one of the last, if not the last, area where the indigenous language is still relatively intact. And that's a huge part of helping kids connect with school and helping them stay in school and not drop out. I always tell people when they come out that our kids don't check their Yupik culture at the schoolhouse door. And as a system, our schools and our school district has to embrace that cultural component and really find ways to work side by side and hand in hand with our communities to find ways to help our kids connect better with the education programs that we offer. That is just, I think it's part of the success that we have is really putting an emphasis on that language and culture. And as a leader in, one of the largest school districts in the state of Alaska, I'm constantly having to find that balance between the cultural aspects of it and the demands from the system, the Western education system, to have kids meet those same high, rigorous academic standards that we really do have an expectation for. And so I feel really blessed to have a school board that is laser focused on student academic achievement and really making sure that our graduation rate is constantly going up, that our student academic achievement is is that we're always looking at that and finding ways to help our kids be successful. So
This has
yeah.
got to be one of the most interesting parts of this discussion today. Seeing the film, and you see the population data that you show us is shown in the film about a Native Alaskan community with the bilingual issue, the cultural issues, and then the balance of life in the 21st century. Because in that film, we also saw, besides the sleds and all the wonderful traditions, we saw computers. And so I'm really interested to learn how you're achieving that balance, because it's not just computers, it's those test scores and the learning, and how can that be relevant when I live in this village where this cultural piece comes in. So how do we keep that and still help our students, your students, go forth into their lives and their careers? And I know you're going to share that with us, but don't you think that's the interesting balance that people all over this country are facing, whether it's urban or rural?
It is. I was just thinking, as Dan you were describing how different that is, and how educators here in the lower 48 don't face many of those challenges that you face.
Yeah, exactly, and you're exactly right that you've got two ends of the spectrum there. You've got the culture and language aspect that is just absolutely core to our mission, and you balance that with giving kids access to the latest technology. I think Kelly can attest to that. Our school district, even as large as we are one of the leaders in the state in technology, and it's really about breaking down barriers and helping kids have an opportunity to be taught by great teachers, to have access to the same upper level math, science, language courses that any kid anywhere in the U.S. would have, yet making sure kids are still connected with who they are as Native Americans. And so you're right. It is a balance, and there are demands on both ends. And you have to keep that in mind as you do it. At the same time, the giving kids access to technology and giving them access really past that to the opportunities that they may not otherwise get has led us really to some of the programs that we've put in place that give kids access. We have one of the largest, if not the largest, in the state of Alaska, possibly anywhere in the nation, two-way interactive video conference system where kids in our remote villages, where they may have one or two kids that need to take advantage of an upper level, a pre-calculus or calculus class or a physics class, pre-engineering, STEM-related courses, they have the opportunity to log on to a video conference system that gives them access to a highly qualified teacher that is right here in Bethel in a teaching studio, and is able to interact with that teacher and have access to that same course that the kids in our largest high school here in Bethel of 500 kids have access to. And so that's one example of breaking down barriers. We've really tried to take that further with bringing kids, giving them opportunities to leave their villages for short periods of time to be able to come to Bethel. We have a boarding program here that is a semester, up to a semester at a time, a variable length boarding program that gives kids the opportunity to participate in larger cohorts at those same upper level math and science, STEM related. We have several other career pathways that give kids access to these opportunities to leave their village for a short time. But it's really important, and one of the core values of those programs is helping kids stay connected to their culture and who they are.
Dan, as a leader, your role there is probably different from what the typical superintendent would be in the lower 48. I'm sitting here thinking that you have to empower people more because you can't go out and micromanage schools and teachers and leaders at the building level. And then also, you seem to have a much greater portion of your energy devoted to creating solutions and creating access and creating adaptations. Is that true?
Absolutely, and as I share a little bit about where the work we've been doing the last few years with the Alaska Native Education grants, those grants have really allowed us to bring a lot of solutions to our school district, and it probably started with our first A&E grant about 4 or 5 years ago. That brought some professional development for our leaders in our schools, our principals, our site administrators, and really helping them understand that it's more than just, while you'll always be the person, the face of that school, and almost a mini superintendent, because the buck really does stop with you. When the weather goes down and none of us can get there and you have a crisis going in your school, we're available via phone or video conference. But at the end of the day, the buck stops with you. At 3 o'clock in the morning when the electricity goes out, and it's 30 below outside, and you have to get the generators going to get the power on. The buck is always going to stop with that principle there on those sorts of things. But one of the things that we have really focused on in the last probably 3 years is finding ways for our principals to really be instructional leaders and not and less so managers, finding things that we can do at the systems or district level to take things off their plate that are not the education, instruction related parts. And that would not have been possible without the support of the U.S. Department of Education, the Alaska Native Education Program, and us being able to hire some really national level experts in school leadership, some national level experts in RTI work that we're doing to help our struggling learners get up to grade level. And so you're exactly right. We spend a lot of time finding answers to what we call adaptive challenges. The technical challenges, they have a technical solution. In our communities, we are faced with adaptive challenges. I sometimes talk about our principals and the leaders drinking from the fire hose. You have things coming at you so hard and fast that it's really hard to focus. And so part of our recent efforts, which is really gets to the heart of dropout prevention for us, is some of the efforts we've had at really taking some of those things off the plate of our principals and helping them focus on instruction, because that is going to be the only way we're going to have a positive impact on graduation rate and reducing dropout rate.
Dan, you mentioned the 15 effective strategies, and I'm thinking that obviously there has to be adaptation there as well. What's working for you the best?
When I think of the 15 adaptive strategies, and there are, they're filtered throughout our work. Probably some of the most important ones, most recently for us, are the systemic renewal. We've got our board asked us 3 years ago. They wanted to do what most folks call strategic planning. But we had a little bit of a shift in our board where we had board members that said, we're not really interested in having a plan that sits on the shelf. And so we really did a kind of a homegrown, organically grown, if you will, process, and filtered in that process. And if you could bring up the slide, the strategic thinking model, I can talk about how some of the 15 effective strategies of the National Dropout Prevention Center fit in here. And this process, what our board wanted was, they didn't want a strategic plan that after we developed it with the board and the administration, that their experience was that that plan sat on the shelf. And so they asked us to come back to them with a process and a model that would really focus on student outcomes. After several months of working, we had a little bit of a delay on this. Within days of the first meeting of this, prior to that, we had a school fire here in Bethel, and lost one of our schools. And so that kind of threw us off our timeline a little bit. And over the last year, we have developed a little further in this process. And our board last March and April adopted what we call our key measures. If you could go to the next slide, it lays out those key measures. And these are 3-year outcomes that the board said, this is our expectation of you as our leaders. We want to see growth in these areas. And as you can see, number 1 on that list is that our 4-year graduation rate will reach 75%. A lot of the work we've done with these grants over the last few years, if you look historically, we started these grants in the 13-14 school year and really got ramped up after that. We had a significant jump in our graduation rate. It went from 37% to about 53% for the last 2 years. And our dropout rate has decreased slightly. So we feel like we're on the right track. We have really got our principals focused on how they can, rather than having 27 different schools doing 27 different things, the board has said every school will work on these 4 key measures, and they will develop action plans on how they will help their kids achieve these. And so that has been the process. But as you can see, the number 1 key measure there is dropout prevention, which, is just, it has almost every one of the 15 key strategies. It can be found somewhere in these 4 key measures, or really, as you peel the layers of the onion back, so to speak, on these 4 and develop your action plans, they really are, the 15 key strategies are filtered throughout every bit of this, from the early childhood learning to the systemic review or renewal, which is really the whole process. And I think it's, we still have a lot of work to do. We certainly don't have the answers, but I can tell you that our team here and our principals and our board, and it really starts from our board, they are laser focused on making sure these key measures are implemented to the fullest extent, so much so that our entire budget process for the FY18 school year is really being turned on its head, to where everything we do, certainly there are things that we have to pay for. We have to keep the lights on and pay the fuel bill and pay our teachers and staff. But beyond that, everything that we are doing has to be linked right back to these 4 key measures. And I think it's a tribute to our board that they actually put numbers on these key measures and said, this is what you need to be shooting for, and we want to see some growth in this. And I appreciate them saying that, and I feel that that pressure every day. I also know that we have to, and our board has supported this, finding ways to and giving our staff the freedom to be innovative and creative in helping kids be successful, because our circumstance is different. We are remote, we're rural, we have language issues, we have a culture that I just demand that we embrace. And so anyway, I'll stop there, and I can get on a roll with this.
This is really good to have those goals out there, and with all these different schools being so isolated, I'm assuming, and please correct me, that each school has got perhaps a dropout prevention team, or maybe it's the whole school led by the principal to determine what would be appropriate in our school to implement among the strategies and so forth towards meeting that goal for our schools.
Well, you're exactly right. And in our schools teams, they range from, as you can imagine, we have our smallest school that has a principal and a teacher that are essentially the staff there for about 10 kids, to our largest of 260 kids in our largest village, 500 plus in our largest high school here in Bethel. And so the teams vary, but every school has a leadership team, and every school in collaboration with their advisory board. So all of our schools have what's called an advisory school board. It's community members. They don't have a whole lot of authority, but the language we use with them is that they have incredible influence on what happens in the school. And so there's a combination of the school leadership team, the advisory board. The expectation is that they're all working together, that they are creating a school action plans that are aligned very much with their school improvement plans. We just had our advisory school board conference. We brought 125 of our native leaders from our remote communities, along with their principal, into Bethel, had a 2-day conference with them to help them understand their roles and responsibilities, as well as the areas that they can have influence and support the school in meeting those 4 key measures, and really moving that school forward.
Dan, I want to commend you and your school board. Our experience at the National Dropout Prevention Center, and my experience as a local school board member myself, has been that when school boards focus on graduation and completion with skills, that moves the needle. And when school boards focus on minutia, nuts and bolts, and astroturf and heating systems, many times the graduation rate stays stagnant. So I commend your board for that.
Yeah, it is. I can't say enough how blessed I feel to have a board that is really focused on student learning. They support us. They challenge us every day to find ways to help our kids be successful. They hold us accountable, which I appreciate that. I appreciate their perspective. I appreciate them asking the hard questions and challenging us to find solutions to the dropout challenges that we have, finding solutions to to helping kids connect with school and focusing on that school climate and that school connectedness that is really foundational to solving that dropout problem and the dropout crisis. And really, when we think about graduation rates, we want our graduation rate we want every single kid to graduate. One of the things that's a little different for us is that we have a lot of kids that take 5 and 6 years to graduate, and for a variety of reasons. But one of the biggest challenges that our kids face in other than the obvious ones of the remoteness, the distance, the challenges that we have in bringing them access to those same high rigor classes, is really goes to that language issue. I tell the story sometimes that when I started as a teacher in Quinnahock 25 years ago, the kids came to school very fluent in the Yupik language. And you fast forward from 25 years ago to today, and while there's still a large number of kids that that Yupik is their first language, we have a lot of kids that, because of the advances in technology and things like that, they come to school without a really strong L1 or first language. And so in many cases, a large number of our kids will start out in a language sort of way, in many cases 2 and 3 years behind their monolingual peers in other parts of the state and nation. And so we're always playing catch up, if you will, with some of the language issues. It's one of the reasons that we focus so hard now on our dual language program and our language programs in general. We've developed curriculum pieces.
Yeah, one of the things that strikes me is this community involvement piece. I don't think that from the school board at that level, but in each of the communities, if I was a parent in one of these villages and you were talking about sending my child to the big city for a boarding school, I would really have to have major buy-in and trust with my local school. And so it seems to me that's such a key part, not just that piece, but the whole thing about every change that you make, the community is involved in the decision. And don't you think, Sandy, this is a lesson for rural areas about the community valuing education, like obviously your folks do, and it's the ultimate thing, to send your young child away.
It is, and I was thinking too, Dan, that your villages and communities have historically experienced and lived with lower graduation rates. So I wonder how are your community members and your parents reacting to this change?
You know, that is I'm actually really glad you asked the question, because it is core to our mission. And anybody who knows the history of boarding schools with our Native communities knows how painful that really was. This building that my office is in is a former boarding home for former regional boarding school. Bethel Regional High School still has that name. So the folks are very aware of that. It's one of the reasons when we developed our variable length boarding program, where kids come in for up to a semester at a time, that one of the core values of that program is that we keep kids connected to their culture. We absolutely understand that as kids leave their communities, in many cases, those kids have daily chores that they have to do, and that is a burden for our communities. And so every single day we have parents struggling with wanting to allow their children to go off to this variable length boarding program to get that experience and get that opportunity to extend their learning. And they're balancing that with the real need for needing that young adult child in their communities to help with all of the things that our communities struggle with. As you can imagine, and as I mentioned earlier, not having running water and flush toilets in all of our communities, that is an added burden. People have to haul water. Our young male students, and in many cases female students, those are their chores after school. They go and haul water, and sometimes that water is taken from a local watering place. sometimes it's going and chopping ice in the river and bringing the ice back and putting it in a large barrel in their homes for it to melt, and that is their drinking water. And so you can imagine those challenges that go along with that, and the conflict really that a parent who really, and I've got to say, I've been all over this school district, and I have yet to find a parent who doesn't want the best for their kids. And that challenge, that conflict that they feel of supporting their child going off to that variable length boarding program, understanding the historical pain that comes along with that, yet knowing that they have to trust us because we are really focused on providing these quality opportunities for our kids that are keeping them connected to their home school and their culture is absolutely key to being successful with this.
You know, before we close things down, because you won't believe it, but we're getting close to the end, and Kelly has some comments to make. But there's a video on the website that is something to support your school district, but it also shows some of the strategies that the different villages are employing. And I want to alert the viewers to, after this program is over, to have a look at that, because you will be amazed. And maybe you could talk a few more minutes, Dan, about the different kinds of things. I saw the Math Academy, I saw flying, I saw healthcare, I saw all kinds of things that parents will see the opportunities for their children that don't send them to Florida. But that keep them in Alaska. So could you just address that as your final thoughts?
Sure. You know, this the variable length program started about 7 years ago with a grant from the Gates Foundation that was funneled through an organization here in Alaska, the Rasmussen Foundation, and it gave us seed money basically to partner with the Alaska Native Science and Engineering program out of the University of Alaska Anchorage, and that was the kind of the seed money, if you will, to get started with this program. When it first started, that dormitory life thing really wasn't a dormitory at all. We had to find house parents here in Bethel and paid them a stipend, and they were the parents essentially for these students coming from our villages for up to a semester at a time. We have now expanded that. We have a temporary dorm because the fire that happened was at one of our boarding areas, and so we're leasing dorm space. Excuse me. Right now, but our variable length program has evolved now into about 7 or 8 career pathways. So obviously we started with STEM. The Alaska Native Science and Engineering program was the one that kind of got us headed in that direction. We've now expanded. We have an education pathway. One of the huge pieces for us is growing our own, having local Native kids go to school to become teachers and principals and come back and work in this area. The aviation pathway, as you can imagine, in a remote area, aviation is a huge part of daily life out here. Bethel is only a community of 6,000 people, but we have the 3rd busiest airport in the state of Alaska because of all the communities around us. So aviation, and not just pilots, but mechanics and folks working in the aviation industry is huge. And so we've got a partnership going there with a lot of the airlines and organizations here to start working to get kids trained in that industry, the construction industry. So we're constantly looking to find career pathways that we can start that will give kids choice and many different opportunities. And I think we're really seeing that pick up some steam. And I think we're going to see over the next few years that is going to provide even more opportunities for our kids.
Oh, it's exciting stuff. I was going to say, and then I thought, oh, this is really awful. But that's just the tip of the iceberg of what we've heard from Dan today. It's like, oh, that's,
Wow.
well, there we go. But I think, Dan, we appreciate your being with us, and I know you're going to want to hear what Kelly Tongsmeyer has to say, just like we do, and then we'll have our farewells to both of you. Kelly, what you got on your mind here?
Oh, well, gee, you can see why I'm so excited about having the opportunity to work with Dan and his team for over 5 years on systemic reform to improve high school graduation. You can see how they model stable leadership that is not the norm in rural Alaska, but Dan and Carlton and so many of their key leaders have been there, and they have a long-term commitment to their district. Wow, look at the barriers that they're overcoming. Look at the way they use technology in so many different ways. The way they connect to the culture, the way that they're working to keep the indigenous language alive through their dual instruction program, their commitment to professional development for teachers, principals, and district leaders is just fabulous. It's been such a thrill for us to provide a team of high-powered consultants that have worked with LKSD now, the same folks for over 5 years, and the district capacity is growing by leaps and bounds, and they're becoming much less reliant on our consultants, and they're taking the ownership and the leadership on their own. They do a fabulous job with hiring Native teachers, for supporting them through their programs to become certified. This is such a big issue in rural Alaska, where teacher turnover in many places exceeds 30% every single year. They do an incredible job in that area. They just provide so many opportunities for kids to expand their horizons, and they have such a great balance between the cultural expectations and the academic expectations coming from the state level. One of the big challenges that we didn't really talk much about today, but there's a preponderance of early career teachers throughout rural Alaska, including Lower Kuskokwim. So in many of these districts, more than half the teachers are in their first, second, or third years of teaching. There are tremendous challenges that brings about. Their career pathways program is exemplary, and it's really based on real jobs for kids, brings kids into Bethel for short stays. It doesn't send them off to boarding school for 4 years and all the trauma that's caused. They're data-driven. That certainly was so clear. And everybody in the district is accountable for the 4 key measures. They understand what they are. They're clear, concise. There's a laser focus on the clear shared goals. Another thing we didn't have time to get into is we're developing an early warning system that I think is going to have a tremendous impact. And of course, the role of the school board. Wow. Yeah. I haven't seen a school board in rural Alaska in my many, many years working here that takes the kind of leadership that the LKSD board takes and keeps the focus on student engagement and student performance. So you can see why I'm so excited about working with these folks.
Well, absolutely, Kelly. And I think it's been a holiday gift for us to be inspired by your work, Dan, and those of all your colleagues and the families and the school board, everybody in LKSD. That's easier to say.
There you go.
Yeah.
And Marty, we just can't thank the U.S. Education Department enough for giving us a number of grants that have really helped do this work. The Alaska Native Education Program has just been a wonderful opportunity for us here in Alaska. So I know Dan's acknowledged that too. So thank you.
It's good to say our thank yous.
Yeah.
It
And there's so
definitely
much
is.
that we can learn, we all can learn from how you guys adapt and how you stay on focus, you stay on point, on mission, on target. We commend you.
Yeah, and it's great, isn't it, to see the effective strategies
It is.
procedure in operation, and what a great impact. So thank you, Dan, and thank you, Kelly. And I want to tell our audience, I think you guys or maybe you, Dan, and some of your folks are going to be at the conference in Scottsdale, Arizona this coming April. Here it is up on your screen. You can have a look and start thinking. If you got more questions like we do for Dan, head to Arizona in April and you can pick his brain and learn more. So thank you both for being here. And thank you, Alaska, for the great stories you brought us these last 2 months, Kelly.
Yeah, we'll be presenting a lot of this work at that conference. A number of LKSD board members will be there, and
Great.
we're so thankful that NDPC puts on this Native Forum each year. It's a great opportunity to share our work and network with other folks doing similar things.
Okay.
That's great. We look forward to seeing you there, guys, and invite us up. We'll come visit.
Maybe in June.
Yes, anytime. Thank you
Thanks very
much.
much.
Much appreciated.
Thank you.
Yeah. Well, Sandy, what an hour it's been.
Yes,
It's
Marty.
been. I'm
Wow.
so impressed with the story that we heard today.
Oh, I am too.
And I think, in addition to Native communities, the emphasis on rural communities is huge.
Exactly. Rural communities have so much challenge of distance and resource and technology, and so we're pleased to be part of that. We have just added to our website, Marty, www.dropoutprevention.org. We've just added a rural resource section that includes video film clips and documentaries on different rural states like Alaska and what they're doing.
Yeah, that's a great new resource, and have a look because you'll learn even more. So, and there's a lot of them, so it's going to be fun. But you might want to start with Alaska. I would start with Alaska, A in the alphabet, and you just
First
have
on
this
the list,
wonderful
Marty.
program. Very good. Well, we appreciate your being here with us today, Sandy, and we
you, Marty.
appreciate all of you out there
Yes.
in dropout prevention land and taking the time to watch today's program. If you like the program and want to share with your colleagues, you should know that this is archived at the National Dropout Prevention Center website for you to view forever and ever. And so isn't that great that Dan's conversation today will live on, because it's an important one.
It is, Marty. This is the 81st episode of the Solutions broadcast that'll be archived on our website for our viewers.
Wow. Okay. Well, tune in and if you want to look back, there's a lot to look back at. Anyway, we look forward to seeing you all in January in the new year, where we assure you we will have another new fine program on solutions to the dropout crisis. Happy New Year.